Settle down, brother. Helen Zille wants to be the mayor of Johannesburg. Yes, to quote The Godfather, just when we thought she was out, she pulled herself back in. That is the story of Helen Zille, inserting herself in and all over the place. Let's talk about it. The whole country has been obsessing over the last few days, and really, Helen Zille divides opinion. There have been virulent, angry people saying she will never be Joburg mayor. She is terrible. She's going to divide the city. She's not who we want. She's not even from here. And then there have been people saying, no, we need her. She is one of the very few people with the track record and the capacity and the influence to actually get Joburg working again. It has been incredibly divisive. And so we are going to work through everything that has been said. First things first, I'm the realist. No. Oh, Iggy Azalea is still in my head in 2025. So sad. Okay, yeah. First things first, let's tell you what has gone on in the last few days. As you know, Johannesburg is an absolute shit show. It is falling apart. If you are not from Johannesburg, you may not know about how bad it is. But the average streetlight is out. The average road is so riven with potholes and attempts to fix potholes that have not worked that many thousands of roads in Johannesburg have been classified as unsavable. They basically have to be repaved from scratch. You can't fill them all in because they are so degraded with such mess that they are unsalvageable roads and will continue to crumble and fall apart until they are completely replaced. Vast majority of Johannesburg, it doesn't even make the news when areas don't have power or don't have water, and it is completely normal everyday life to have refuse not be removed, to have no power, to have no water. Johannesburg, vast swathes of Johannesburg are incredibly dangerous areas to walk through. The old CBD, for example, is derelict and dangerous and awful. There are abandoned buildings. There are disheveled neighborhoods. It is absolute decay and disaster. And as we have covered on this show many times, it's decayed and fallen apart because of a bunch of things. One of them is rampant political lack of care. Just like total disinterest from political formations who have been in charge, politically elected to lead the city, to care and to maintain the city. And that's how the city has slowly but surely fallen apart over the last decade or longer. There's also been incredible, and by incredible I mean bad, political instability. So constant changes of mayors. Haven't we had like nearly a dozen or more than a dozen mayors of Johannesburg in the last 7 to 10 years?
It's been a lot. I've lost count, to be honest.
Like we were talking at one stage about how there were more Johannesburg mayors than winners of Big Brother over like a half-decade period.
True.
No political party in Johannesburg gets majority of the vote. So there have to be coalitions, and the coalitions constantly fall apart. 2 of the recent Johannesburg mayors were puppet mayors from Al Jama, a political party that get less votes than somebody who gets top 10 on Idols used to get when they had to, like, it wasn't free to vote. You had to SMS, and it cost, 80 cents or something like that. There have been scam puppet mayors. There have been mayors resigning in disgrace. The DA has had mayors. The ANC has had mayors. The ANC currently has a mayor called Dada Morero, who just after he got elected, do you remember this? Just after he got elected, one of the first things he said was, don't expect me to fix anything before 2026.
Yeah, that was wild.
How can you start a new job and be like, by the way, I'm not going to be able to do anything? He said, I don't have enough time to fix anything before local government elections 2026. He said that in 2024, 2 years before the 2026 local government elections. So that's the state of play in Johannesburg. There are a handful of areas, very few. People have spoken in the last few days about Sandton and about Rosebank, which run relatively well, relatively better, but still not great. And I always laugh because, I live and I work between Joburg and Cape Town. Just psychologically, coming back to Cape Town and driving on the roads and not physically bracing yourself as you drive for the shock, the roughness of the road, just psychologically of that, and then going to Joburg and just noticing that Sandton level roads are the norm in at least the rich and expensive areas of Cape Town. Because as you know, we're about to talk about how much good the DA has actually done here and how much of Cape Town is actually great to live in, because that's where a lot of the debate is. But it is simply true that much more of Cape Town functions well than Johannesburg does. And then I want to mention one more really interesting idea about why Johannesburg has fallen apart that Ferial Haffajee, the iconic journalist, told us about on the TV show, the Dan Quarter Show on ENCA. She talked about how around the 2010 World Cup, so in maybe about 15 years ago now, Johannesburg politicians decided to create these boards that would manage certain aspects of the running of Johannesburg. And these boards were full of appointees by political parties. And these boards almost instantly caused the collapse of services, in Ferial Haffaj's opinion from her perspective. Because she said that these boards were not accountable to people. These boards could not be voted out by the population. These boards were often, cadre deployment or put there by corrupt dealings. And the boards that were put in place to more efficiently oversee the provision of services and the maintenance of Johannesburg almost instantly became corrupt, dysfunctional, uncaring, and allowed Johannesburg to collapse. And from Ferial Haffaj's analysis, the reason why other cities haven't collapsed as badly as Joburg is because they didn't do that. And so that's massive to remember. So that's, I guess, a whistle-stop tour of how shit Johannesburg is. No shame. I love Johannesburg. It's my favorite city on the planet. But the decay into squalor and shit, the disrespect of people, the damaging of people's lives. Like Johannesburg can't get a clean audit at the moment. There's rampant corruption. There is billions and billions and billions of rands of fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure that is just money that should have been helping the people of Johannesburg. And the people of Johannesburg are a brilliant, resilient people who found ways to keep going. But like the shit that is Johannesburg, about being in Johannesburg, the decay and the degradation is a consequence of political evil. Cool. So now let's talk about Helen Zille. If you didn't know, Helen Zille is a big deal. She is incredibly influential. She still calls all the shots in the leader of the biggest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance. Essentially, her picks become the picks to lead the party. She was the mayor of Cape Town back in the 2000s. She was the premier of the Western Cape also, if I remember correctly. She is the reason why the Democratic Alliance evolved from a very small party in the 90s, one of many competing to rise, into the dominant opposition party against the African National Congress. She is, or was, clearly a phenomenally talented politician and got a lot of credit in the 2000s. I mean, when the ANC lost the Western Cape and Zille became mayor, she was handling tense coalitions. She was handling lots of different parties together and trying to make a difference and put together a sustainable government that could rule. Then she became Premier of the Western Cape, and largely under her leadership and because of her leadership, the Western Cape is now completely blue. It's absolutely blue. It is a DA stronghold. It is the only province in the country that doesn't have the ANC in power, at least in coalition, if not in an absolute majority. And so Helen Zille deserves a lot of credit for how good she is as a political operative, how she has remained one of the most powerful and influential operators in South African politics for coming up on 3 decades. It is really impressive what she's been able to do politically. Then, though, there's the fact that she is an unbelievably divisive figure. All the time, year after year, she says things that inflame certain people. Many people think that she is racist. She often does kind of colonialism apologetics, where she says, say what you want about colonialism, but at least it's brought us infrastructure and modern technologies and running water and all of that, which is just so insane. To suggest, one, that technologies only move because of occupation and oppression and conquering is absurd. Trade happens all the time. Technologies would have moved across borders anyway. But secondly, we just don't need a silver lining to more than 350 years of brutal oppression that has created the most unequal country in the world with some of the most injustices of any country in human history. She also rages against wokeness, which she largely just describes as any kind of new progressive moral thought that's come along in the last 10 to 15 years. She faults BEE, Black Economic Empowerment Policy, as being one of the great degraders of South Africa. She rails against all different kinds of workers' unions, or has a lot of the time. She pushes free market positions, which broadly screw poorer people.
And it's so bizarre because, back in the 70s, wasn't she one of the journalists that also uncovered or the cover-up, if you will, of Steve Biko's death.
Yeah.
And she worked with the Black Sash and all kinds of other things. And so it doesn't, there's a cognitive dissonance for me.
There's a clear political or moral evolution.
Yeah, and it's just such a, almost fall from grace, if you will.
Totally. But what all that means is, in the last 5 to 10 years, If anything, Helen Zille has become someone who seems less likely to be able to build coalitions, less likely to be able to persuade people to work with her, less likely to be able to compromise and find deals to, say, pull together a coalition to be an effective Joburg mayor. Now, people in response to that would say, oh no, but she's been the mastermind behind the GNU negotiations, getting the DA, all those ministers, keeping the EFF and the MK party out of power. And so it is complicated, and she has got extremely good historic co-working relationships with, say, people in the African National Congress. But it is now less clear whether or not Helen Zille, who is 74 this year, has the kind of public reputation and the relationships with politicians across the country and their voters to be a palatable choice to work with. You've seen some of the vitriol lashing out against the idea of her becoming Joburg mayor in the last handful of days of people. Look, some people believe that she's racist, saying we don't want that person here. We don't want our people to work with with that kind of person. And so that's kind of the state of play right now. Helen Zille has said that she'd like to come and be mayor of Johannesburg, that she's run it past her husband and her children who would stay in Cape Town, that she would live in a residence with her sister, and that she wants to come and try and save Johannesburg and to fix it. So, what is likely to happen based on everything that we've just described? Let's start at the start. Will she get the DA mayoral support? I think yes. I can't see a world where an internal DA battle over who's going to be the mayor-elect comes up with anybody but Helen Zille. Because frankly, if Helen Zille wanted to replace John Steenhuisen right now as leader of the party on the ballot, she could do so. It's absolutely her party. She runs it. Cool. So if it then comes to an election, local government next year, how well would a Helen Zille-led Democratic Alliance ticket do? I think pretty well. The DA already is doing well and growing in Gauteng because more and more people in Gauteng, in Johannesburg and beyond, want well-run cities with good service delivery. And Cape Town is a complicated story, but the fact of the matter is the DA has the reputation for good governance. They have the reputation for providing service delivery and running stuff well. And I will say that unlike in Johannesburg, the DA is very good at getting clean audits. The DA is very good at showing that they're spending money correctly. The DA is broadly good at proving that they are providing service delivery within their range. Cape Town is more complicated than that, as we'll get to in a second. But the fact that this is the DA's reputation is the reason why they've got more and more support in Johannesburg over time. That's why, because Joburgers are desperate just for a well-run city.
It definitely helps that and you brought it up now as well, that the Auditor General has been so glowing about the Western Cape and all the clean audits from this side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the backlash to what I just said, or the counter idea to what I just said, is that there's a widely held correct understanding that there are two Cape Towns. One is what I generally call Cape Town International. That's where everyone speaks German and, there are beautiful beaches and it's the second most popular travel destination in the world. Eric, it's nothing to do with your German.
Oh, no. I wasn't going to say that. I was going to ask what's the other one, the Cape Town Lanseria.
What? Oh, sorry. Okay, no, I get it. Okay, cool. So the other Cape Town is Cape Town, South Africa, where millions of Cape Townians live in working class conditions that are overrun or at least threatened by very, very dangerous and serious crime, a gangsterism crisis, as Johan Rupert name-checked John Steenhuisen over in that meeting between Trump and Ramaphosa at the White House. The Cape Town South Africa also has enormous townships that are horrible to live in, and people in those townships suffer terrible quality of life. Now, the city of Cape Town will say, we only have so much budget. We can only do so much before national government needs to step in and do stuff too. And they'll say we do clean audits, and they'll say that we have created and provided more service delivery opportunities and services in townships than in townships in other places in the country. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that is the case, even insofar as it is awful to live in many of these townships. Cape Town also has comparatively very low unemployment relative to the rest of the country. So even if you are living in squalor in and around Cape Town, you are more likely to have a job. But you can see there's this wrestling match because a lot of South Africans will say the DA doesn't serve the poor and not even in Cape Town. And so potential voters in Joburg will say, is this DA really going to serve us? Is it really going to help us? Or are they going to do a Cape Town International style thing and fix all of the old wealthy leafy suburbs in Johannesburg and do very little for poorer areas that are more in need of service delivery and support? So that'll be the wrestling match if Helen Zille runs for mayor of Joburg. I think the DA will do well. All the trends suggest that they are doing well, but I don't think that they'll win a majority. It just seems unlikely. It seems like at this point, all of the political parties are too far away from that 50%, and they'll probably need to create a coalition. And that's when it becomes interesting, because how many coalition partners the DA will need will depend on how many votes they get. If they get 40%, then they need very few coalition partners, and they'll probably be able to find a few parties and tempt them into a coalition. If they get lower than that, 30%, they'll need more coalition partners. And that's when we need to ask if other political parties will do deals with Zille. That's when we need to ask, will Helen Zille's reputation and the way she's conducted herself in the last 10 years, the way she's viewed by voters and many South Africans, will that push political parties to not work with her and keep her out of power? And then let's assume Helen Zille does become the mayor of Joburg. She does put together a coalition, and the DA does run that coalition in Johannesburg. What is likely to happen next? Well, that's the big question, because it is clear that Helen Zille, under her leadership, the DA has done good governance in many parts of the Western Cape, even as life has remained hard and awful and treacherous for many other people in the Western Cape. But it still is broadly true that it is better to live in the Western Cape than it is in many other areas. And that's where the tricky thing comes in, right? Because the other thing you need to understand about Cape Town and the Western Cape is that Cape Town and the Western Cape had better service delivery and service provision than most other places in South Africa, even before the DA came to power in the 2000s. So it's not as though Cape Town was absolutely falling apart. Obviously, there were parts of Cape Town that were not great back in the 2000s that have been refurbished and changed. But Cape Town and the Western Cape benefits from historically much stronger education system than the rest of the country, much stronger healthcare system than the rest of the country. The DA had advantages over the rest of the country when they came to power to develop and improve, but then take credit for, more so than in other places, like, say, Johannesburg in 2025. And so that's where the real question comes in, because right now it feels like, for a lot of people in South Africa, do we swallow someone like Helen Zille, who a lot of people in Johannesburg really don't like, in exchange for good governance? But then the question becomes, will we actually get good governance if Zille is in power? Because frankly, the DA has been part of ruling coalition governments in Johannesburg in the last handful of years. They've had DA mayors in the last handful of years. And how much better did it get? Not really. Not really at all.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, like, apart from Mpopa, that's it twice.
Yeah.
The last, real, DA leader there, 2016 to 2019, was Herman Mashaba. But probably also let's be honest, he is a divisive character as well. So it will be interesting. I mean, I don't know where my thought process was going particularly, but I mean, if Herman Mashaba was your last DA mayor in Joburg, is Helen Zille that far of a stretch to think about as a possibility?
That's true. No, I hear you. Of course, Herman Mashaba may well be running against Helen Zille in 2026.
Fair play.
So we'll have to see.